Week 1 was crazy. There were a lot of upsets, there were some big name schools that lost games, and more importantly, there were some quarterbacks who we thought were going to be spectacular who did not play well. In today's video, I want to highlight 10 different elite quarterbacks that either played terrible week 1 or did not live up to expectation. But right before we start today's video, nearly 80% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel, and I'll definitely need your help to get that number up, and you won't want to miss out on all the consistent college football content I have coming your way. Now, without further ado, let's talk about 10 elite quarterbacks who looked terrible in week 1. The first player I want to talk about is Washington quarterback Dylan Morris. While many people probably didn't see him or tier him as an elite quarterback, Morris had a decent amount of hype going into this year, and more importantly, the Washington Huskies were a ranked team, so he had expectations on his shoulders and was expected to help this team have a great year. Unfortunately, he played absolutely terrible in week 1. His QBR was 8.4, which was 120th out of 130th in the country. Coming out of high school, Dylan was a 4-star recruit, and he even started a couple games last year, so no one expected the kind of performance he had against Montana. He went 27 of 46, which is 58%, for 226 yards and 3 interceptions. He didn't have a passing touchdown, but he did have 1 rushing touchdown, and in what was supposed to be a tune-up game or an easy win to work the kinks out before Michigan, Washington blew it at home 13-7 to Montana, and it would not surprise me if he gets benched for Sam Heward. The next guy I want to talk about is Emory Jones. At one point, he was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, and he originally decided to take his talents to Ohio State. After they were going after another quarterback, though, he decided to flip to Florida, where eventually he'd be under head coach Dan Mullen. He spent 3 years as a backup, and everyone was waiting for his potential to be unleashed. Well, he would make his first career start this past weekend against Florida Atlantic, and I wouldn't exactly say it went according to plan. He went 17 of 27 for 113 yards. That is 63%, but he just looked off. He had 2 interceptions compared to 1 touchdown, and his QBR was only 56, which was below average. The one thing that would save him is that he had 10 carries for 74 yards, but the main reason why I'm highlighting him today is because his backup, Anthony Richardson, played absolutely spectacular. I've seen a lot of Florida fans already calling for Emory Jones to be benched and Anthony to start, and after what Anthony did, I don't exactly blame them. Emory Jones is always a project kind of player, and when you're a quarterback for a big-time program, you don't get all the time in the world to develop and pan out. Richardson looks like the better player right now, and Emory struggled in week 1, so he may not have a job soon. The next guy we're going to talk about is Wisconsin quarterback Graham Mertz. Coming out of Overland Park, Kansas, Mertz was a late riser in the class of 2019 and blossomed into a borderline 5-star recruit. He had offers from all around the country, but Wisconsin was always loyal to him, so he decided to stay committed to the Badgers. He played spectacular in their first game last year against Illinois, but as we all know, Wisconsin had a lot of trouble with positive tests, so their season was really whack. Going into this year, he had a lot of hype, and the Badgers were ranked top 25. They were pegged to play number 19 Penn State in week 1, and this was one of the best games of opening weekend. Mertz, however, didn't play that great. He went 22 of 37 for 185 yards. He didn't throw a single touchdown, and he had 2 interceptions. He also had negative 26 yards rushing, but that's probably more blamed on the offensive line than him. His QBR was 18.5, which was 109th out of 130 different players, but that is a little bit misleading. His 2 interceptions came in crunch time when they needed a score, and he just couldn't get the job done. He overthrew one of his receivers for what would have been a game-winning touchdown, and then the following play he threw a pick. There's really no one behind Mertz who I think could push him for the job, but it wasn't exactly the greatest week 1 performance by him, and he's going to need to step it up if he wants to help Wisconsin win the Big Ten West and potentially compete for a Rose Bowl. The next guy I want to talk about is Brock Purdy. He was a late riser coming out of Gilbert, Arizona, and after getting an offer from Bama, he decided to stick with Iowa State. He would start in one of his first games as a freshman for the Cyclones, and ever since then, he has been a star quarterback for them. Iowa State got to the Big 12 championship last year and beat Oregon in their bowl game, so they started out top 10. They should have had an easy week 1 matchup against Northern Iowa, but it was anything but that. They only ended up winning by 6 points, and their star quarterback struggled. His QBR was only 50, and there's absolutely no reason why a top 10 team like Iowa State should even think about struggling at home against an FCS school. Yes, I know they went to 3 overtimes in 2019, but this is just unexcusable. They have arguably the best running back in the country in Breece Hall, and Brock Purdy has been there for quite a while and should have it figured out. He went 21 of 26 for 199 yards without a touchdown or an interception. He also had 58 yards on the ground without a score, but more importantly, he failed in the leadership department as there's absolutely no reason why this game should have been close, and they've got to get it together if they want any chance of winning the Big 12, going to the playoff, or even beating Iowa this upcoming weekend. The next player I want to highlight is Jarret Doege out of West Virginia. While other people might not say he's elite, some expected him to be a breakout quarterback in 2021. He's had 2 years of starting experience for the Mountaineers pretty much, and there was a decent amount of hype going into year 3 under Neil Brown. Well, he didn't exactly play that great in his first game. He went 24 of 40 for 270 yards with only 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. This came in a 30-24 loss against their rival Maryland, and he just did not step up to the plate in this game. His QBR was only 41.7, which was 85th in the country. And when you have a senior quarterback and you're playing on the road against a rival, you need to play better. Both Maryland and West Virginia are teams that are projected to win 6 to 8 games this year. And in terms of West Virginia taking that next step in year 3 under Neil Brown and trying to solidify themselves in the top part of that Big 12 conference, Doege did not play very well, and he is going to have to elevate him and his teammates if West Virginia wants to have a good year. I might get some flack for this one, but the next quarterback we're going to speak about is JT Daniels. He had a ton of hype coming out of high school as he reclassified into the 2018 class and decided to enroll at USC. After having an average freshman year, he had high expectations going into his sophomore year, but he ended up hurting his knee, and Keaton Slovis would take over. He transferred to Georgia, where he battled some injury, but did end up showing some flash towards the end of last year. Because of that, the Bulldogs were highly ranked and expected to both win the SEC East and get to the college football playoff going into this year. They were matched up against number 3 Clemson in week 1, and while he was missing guys like Kyrus Jackson, Arik Gilbert, and Darnell Washington, Georgia has plenty of talent, and for him to only go 22 of 30 for 135 yards is not what I expected. He didn't have a touchdown, and he did throw an interception, and out of someone who I believe can win the Heisman, that wasn't exactly the greatest showing. A lot of people were talking about how bad DJU looked for Clemson, but just because the Bulldogs had a pick 6 doesn't excuse how bad this Georgia offense was. The one thing I will say though is that Georgia was missing those weapons, and he'll likely have them back soon. But either way, JT Daniels needs to play better. Before we get into our final 3 quarterbacks, be sure to quickly hit that like button, subscribe if you have not already, and let me know a future video topic I could do next. We're going to talk about Michael Penix Jr. I have a video about Indiana football and why they look so bad coming up later this week, but my goodness gracious, Michael Penix played terrible. He was a 3-star recruit coming out of high school and originally went to Tennessee, but after his offer was pulled, he went to commit to Tom Allen and the Indiana Hoosiers. A few games into the year, he would start against Penn State, but he would suffer his first injury. That would keep him out for the remainder of the year, and after starting a couple games in 2019 and looking pretty good, he got hurt again. Then in 2020, he had a spectacular first start to the year, but then he would get hurt against Maryland. All 3 years he's gotten hurt, and maybe that's finally taking a toll on him. In terms of how he played this past weekend, his QBR was 14.3, which was 114th in the country. He played absolutely abysmal as he went 14 of 31 for 156 yards, as he had -7 yards rushing, and he threw 3 interceptions. 2 of them went for pick 6s, and he would have had probably 1 or 2 more, but 1 was called back because of a penalty, and 1 was dropped. He legitimately could have finished with 5 picks with 2 pick 6s against Iowa, and for Indiana, who hasn't started the year ranked in nearly 50 years, this was an extremely disappointing performance from him. He just killed a lot of the draft stock and hype he had, and he's got to figure it out if Indiana wants to salvage this year and compete in the Big Ten East. For the last few months, I've been constantly hearing about how Jarret King is one of the best quarterbacks in the country, that Miami's finally going to take that next step, and according to all the Canes fans, I was dumb for being skeptical of them. Well, it turns out maybe Jarret King is not as good as advertised, and while his Week 1 performance did come against Alabama, you'd think he'd be able to do a little bit more. He went 23 of 31 for 178 yards with 1 touchdown and 2 picks. It was not a very good performance. The offense could barely move at all, and for someone who's a true dual-threat quarterback and is good at using his legs, he only had 9 carries for 10 yards. He was a Heisman hopeful, pegged as one of the top players in the country, and was supposed to bring Miami football to the promised land this year, but his Week 1 performance was not that great, and he's got to get a little bit better if the Canes want to have a big year. The next guy we're going to talk about is Clemson's DJ Uiagalelei. Coming out of high school, he was a 5-star recruit, and he played really well last year when he started a couple games. He helped lead a comeback against Boston College and then put up a huge performance in a road loss to Notre Dame, but everyone saw how good he could be in the future. He had a ton of Heisman hype, was signing a ton of NIL deals, and was pegged as the #1 overall pick in 2023, but he did not live up to that in Week 1 against Georgia. While credit needs to be given to the Bulldogs, someone of Uiagalelei's hype and talent should have been able to play better. His QBR was 36.7, which was 93rd in the country, and he went 19 of 37 for 178 yards without a touchdown and an interception. He got sacked 7 times, but you can blame that on the offensive line, and he just looked scared, timid, and afraid. This is not typical of a Clemson Dabo Swinney quarterback, and I think DJ got humbled a little bit in week 1. There was so much hype off the field, and everyone expected such a smooth transition, but now we're really going to see what DJ is made of in these next couple weeks. You could argue that Sam Howell had the worst week of any quarterback. Why? Because he was a legitimate Heisman contender, and his campaign may already be over. Howell went 17 of 32 for 200 yards with 1 touchdown and 3 picks. This came on the road against Virginia Tech, who is now ranked, but there was no excuse for them to lose this game. North Carolina and Howell maybe had too much hype, as he was a projected Heisman candidate and a potential #1 overall pick in 2022. 1 interception, I'm not really going to blame on him. 1 was just a bad play, and the other potentially cost them their season. When they had 3 timeouts and he was trying to lead them down the field to tie the game, he forced a play that was picked off, and it was something that was very uncharacteristic of Howell. Those 3 interceptions are going to prove costly, and he's legitimately going to have to win the next 12 games and put up Joe Burrow-like numbers if he wants any chance of getting to the playoff or bringing home that Heisman Trophy. So I would say that he had the worst week 1 of anyone because he has the hardest road ahead. What do you guys think of today's video? Is there a quarterback I missed? Who's going to win the Heisman this year? And what topic should I do next? Be sure to let me know down in the comment section. Hit that like button if you want to support today's video. Subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen, including my video about the week 1 winners and losers. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.